struggles on the FTAs in the United States. But good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me and including our perspective in this discussion. In the United States, we've been working on the free trade agreements for about 20 years. The big battle really began with NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, and that was where a lot of the beginnings of the coalition work and the other kinds of strategies that we developed came out, and that was right when I came to Washington. So 20 years of my life has been devoted to this discussion with all the obstacles that are put in front of us, the power of the corporations in the lobbying world, the power of the media, which we talked about yesterday, and in our country, the elite of both the Democratic and the Republican parties completely bought into this concept of free trade. But I wanted to talk briefly about one thing which I think has made the United States unique, and maybe it's less unique now in terms of the free trade agreements, is just the way our political system is structured around trade, which is that the Congress, under the Constitution, is given the right to make trade policy, but under a process called fast track, which some of you have heard of, it's a parliamentary process in the United States, they grant the negotiating power to the executive branch. So the president, or the United States Trade Representative, has the power to negotiate an agreement, but at the end of the day, that agreement has to come back to Congress for a vote. And because of the way our political system is, Congress and the president may be of different parties, and there's no guarantee that if the president negotiates an agreement that the Congress will approve it. So that has given us the ability to wage pretty large campaigns at the legislative level, at a grassroots level, in every state, in every congressional district, to get a vote in Congress against the free trade agreements. And I'm going to come back to how that works. But in the European context, you have a new procedure, which is the European Parliament vote, and I think that's something that maybe has more potential than it has yet shown in terms of the context of the European Union. It gives more of an entree for how to have a popular discussion about it. I'll just tell one quick story about NAFTA. When I first got involved in the NAFTA debate, I remember I debated somebody on television, one of the architects of NAFTA, and he was complaining that in the olden days, trade policy was the province of a small elite in the Treasury Department. They sat in a back room and they negotiated trade deals, and nobody ever talked about them and nobody ever debated them. And now he said it's TV talk show material. And he was saying that as a bad thing. And of course, our view on that was this is a good thing, that trade policy has an impact on a lot of people in every country. And those people ought to at least know what's on the table and what's behind it and so on. And so the popularization of the trade debate is a healthy development. So there are four things I want to talk about in terms of mobilization and opposition to trade agreements. And I'll go through them quickly. First is the transnational connection, the international solidarity. The second is the building of a domestic coalition. The third is good analysis, having the right kinds of facts and figures and discussion. And the fourth is the strategy around fixing an agreement, killing an agreement, renegotiating, and so on. But they're all pieces. The first one, in terms of the transnational connection, I'm happy to be sitting here with Becky and Nikin, because this is something that the AFLCIO has put a lot of emphasis on. When we do a free trade agreement with another country, our first contact is to the union in that country, assuming there is a union. It was a little challenging in the context of the United Arab Emirates and Oman. We didn't have any union counterparts, but when we do have a union counterpart, we start there and at least have the exchange of information and views, and we see Alison from the Australian Council of Trade Unions and so on. So that's where we have to understand what each other's concerns are, what each other's fears are, what each other's hopes are, so that we can figure out how to have a coordinated message to the governments. And I think that's really crucial, is that we're each going to be communicating extensively with our own government about the context of a trade agreement. And we're not going to agree with each other on everything. We don't have to agree with each other on everything. We have our own national priorities and our own national concerns and so on, but we try to find the areas of common ground so that we can reemphasize and support each other in that. The other thing that's important about the transnational connection is to change the public debate. In the United States, NAFTA, one of the most challenging parts for us about NAFTA was the main Mexican trade union federations were in favor of NAFTA. And so when we went in public and said, we don't think this agreement is going to be good for Mexican workers, it was very easy for the other side to say, well, who the hell do you think you are? We have the Mexican union standing up and saying they want NAFTA, that it's going to be good, it's going to help keep wages down. Honestly, they said that sometimes. We tried to find partners. There were certainly partners. There were smaller unions, there were working people, there were environmental groups in Mexico that were concerned and opposed to NAFTA, but it makes it very difficult. And I will tell you one thing in terms of things to watch out for is that when there is a split in the country, if there's some unions that are in favor and some unions that are opposed, you can understand that the people in your country who are in favor of the FTA will find those voices in the labor movement that think it's a good thing, and they will be top of the news, they will be trotted out, they'll be on international delegations, they'll be talking to your parliament, your Congress constantly, and you'll hear it like, well, I just met with a nice trade unionist from country X, and he told me he thinks this is the greatest thing ever. And you just have to deal with it, but having a good relationship and having good communication with your union partners is the best way of countering that. Having two-way visits is important. We send our delegations to the country if we can, when we can afford it, and we'd love to host the delegations.